Here's a reality check for you. The majority of podcasts don't even make it past episode 3. And about 1 in 3 podcasters will succumb to podfade, which is another way of saying they don't make it. This is according to the many data points I've spent far too many hours absorbing. If you're thinking, okay, well, that's pretty bleak. Yes, it is. But also, the good news is you, the podcaster or aspiring podcaster, are not the problem. When you look closer at this data, what you see is a huge chunk of podcasts have excellent concepts, excellent people behind the mic, but so few episodes to show for it. It's not about whether you have something to say or whether the show actually has an audience ready to receive that. It's just that there aren't enough systems in place to make sure that it survives when the shit hits the fan, which it inevitably does. And often, even in my experience, that's before you even get to episode 4. If this sounds too bleak to be true, go ahead, take a spin around your podcast app of choice. Click on the first thing you see when you search your favorite topic. You will see the vast majority of those podcasts that come up in your search haven't published a single episode in the past 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 years or more. And it's not their fault. Podcasting has a very low barrier to entry, but a huge barrier to overcome if it's going to be sustainable. You see, a lot has happened in the past several years. There's the pandemic, which brought us all online on Zoom, where we discovered, hey, I do pretty good sitting here in front of my computer screen, yapping away. Maybe I should start a podcast. Or maybe you have taken to voice notes as your way of communicating and thought, this could be a podcast. And yes, it could. And yes, you probably do have a podcast in you. And I'm so glad that these new technologies and ways that we are showing up in the world have shown you that. But 90% of the time, new podcasters do not make it even to episode 9. So if you're thinking, wow, I thought the past 9 meetings I had could have become podcast episodes. Well, technically, yes, but maybe not. The point here is it's not you or your idea. It's actually about everything working against you when you set out to make that podcast that could showcase what is, I'm sure, a very witty, thoughtful, wordsmith, well-spoken, insightful leader that is you. But don't worry, help is on the way. This episode is the start of you starting to think about your podcast in a more strategic and systems-driven way. It's going to help you make it past that tragic number 3 and help you build a podcast that not only lasts beyond episode 3, but also earns its keep. And this is also where the magic of number 3 comes into play. It is both your greatest podcast enemy in that it is so hard to make it past that number 3 in terms of episodes you've put out, but it's also the most powerful number when it comes to your podcast systems. You do have a system, right? No? Okay, that's what I'm here for. I'm Courtney Reimer, and this is Talking the Talk, a podcast about podcasting where we take a magnifying glass to all that goes into making a podcast that lasts. There's this moment I see happen over and over again, particularly in newer podcasters. They start strong with an innovative idea, excitement, enthusiasm, and support from the people who listen to it, sending their feedback, colleagues asking to show up on the podcast. And they're excited. They have something to say and they're like, oh my gosh, this is my thing. I've found my thing. I found the platform that I want to be on where I can share my thoughts without having to dance to the latest song making the rounds on TikTok or write something and then edit out every possible em dash or semicolon or use of the word quietly. You know what I mean. But somewhere around episode 4, and I'll tell you, it happened to even me, you start to lose steam. You start to wonder if all the effort is worth it. Maybe you were throwing spaghetti at the wall. Hey, even I did. And this is my business. I've been doing it for a long time. And then you say, where's the positive feedback? Why am I not seeing more inbound leads or invites for speaking engagements? I thought there would be a more clear return on my investment and my effort in this by now. First of all, you got to have a little patience. Even the most successful podcasters, and I've seen a lot of them speak about it, say 2 things. 1, it is the most powerful tool in their visibility toolbox. But 2, it can take up to a year for that tool to deliver a return on your effort. If you're looking to make a podcast that can give you a platform to share with your audience consistent thought leadership and world changing ideas, stick with me, because when that podcast becomes more of an obligation and less of a fun diversion from other parts of your work, when frustration is beating elation in terms of making your podcast, you'll start turning the magnifying glass on yourself, saying, oh, well, it's me. Maybe I wasn't as clever or witty or smart. I'm not consistent enough. I mismanaged my time or how much time this would take. Or maybe I wasn't meant to have a podcast. Maybe this isn't worth it after all. I'm telling you, that's not the problem. Most podcasts start out turning to the most popular format they see their favorite podcasters turning to, which is the conversation format. And they have this one lane, this one approach, this one rote technique of creation. And that's the interviews and the conversations with the people that they want to have on their show. And look, Amy Poehler, who I hear the most about right now when I ask people why they want to make a podcast, she's good at this. Also, let's not forget, she has a special gift of gab. She's hosted every award show under the sun and has perfected that craft over many, many, many years. She also has a staff of, I would approximate at least 20 people, I'm not exaggerating, contributing to the creation of her podcast in one way or another, from the guest booking to sound check to the sourcing of equipment to the editing to the fixing of the mess ups and the sound and the stutters like I'm making. All she has to do is come in, sit down, and have a great chat with her famous friends. You, however, I'm guessing, are probably doing the work of at least 19 of those 20 people each time you sit down to do an episode. So what happens when the shit hits the fan? You can't book the guest. Your guest cancels. You don't have the energy to find another one. No one's waiting on deck. You put it off another day, another week. Your calendar is a mess. And suddenly you don't have a show because you were leaning too hard on a format that leaned too hard on someone else. In this situation, my friend, you are in systems failure. So when I talk about building a podcast without burnout that earns its keep, what I'm really talking about is this. How do we build a show that doesn't require you to be your best creative, innovative self every single week? How do we build something that does not rely on the capricious and unpredictable calendars of people you'd like to have on the show and have a conversation with, but life happens to them too? How do we build something that works even when you're tired, even when you're busy, even when people won't respond to your guest invitations or people ghost you? You get the idea. This is where the rule of threes comes in. I like the rule of threes, not just because I also like that song. 3 is the magic number. You're like, I didn't come here for the off-key singing. There's a reason 3 is the magic number. If you've heard a version of that song, write me, please, and tell me your favorite version of 3 is the magic number. Courtney at soundsgreatstrategy.com. I digress. The thing is, having just one format is going to burn you out so fast. When everything feels overwhelming, you don't need more ideas, you need more options. You need a small set of reliable ones that becomes something of a Mad Lib that you fill in with your robust creativity and your thought leadership each time you want to make an episode. It's not a cookie cutter template that you just lather, rinse, repeat, and put out like you're a factory every week. These are frameworks that allow your creativity and thinking to flourish. And it's a container that you just have to, like Amy Poehler, show up and plop that part in. At least you know you have a container and you know what shape that container is. And you have ones to choose from depending on your mood and the availability of the people you want to have on your show. Okay. So my rule of threes relies on a sort of heavy-handed rhyme scheme. So stick with me. Your rule of 3 episode formats are these: conversation, which is what we've spent a lot of time talking about. That's the interview. Pontification, which is you saying your awesome things and innovative thoughts and intelligent observations and insights and hard-won expertise. Then there is the explication, which is, I'll admit, a little bit forced in my way of trying to say the episode that explains and responds to something that was either literally submitted to you in the form of a listener question or a mailbag, to use an old-fashioned term, or an indirect listener contribution in the form of a comment on one of your posts or beneath the podcast where you're listening right now, Or even in a conversation, they said something to you. Hey, I listened to your podcast and you were saying this thing about podfade, but what I really want to know about is if I did X, could I fight podfade? You get the idea. Let's start with conversation. Yes, the interview format. Not a ton more needs to be said about this because it is often the cornerstone of most people's podcasting content strategy, and for good reason. It helps you expand your network in a way that is generous and delightful to the people that you invite on your podcast. It also has a deceptive way of making a podcast host think, great, my guest will carry the conversation. I can just sit back and say, yeah, sure. And then have a quick list of 5 questions ChatGPT provided for me, and we're good. But let's not forget, as Jean-Paul Sartre once said, hell is other people and other people are unpredictable. Actually, he just said the hell is other people part. I added the part about them being unpredictable. It's logistically expensive to rely on other people. It requires scheduling, the inevitable email back and forth. Whose calendar is this and that? And where are we going to do this? Or you set up a scheduling system beautifully and you have in your reminders, please wear headphones or else the sound is going to have a ton of echo. And yes, this has happened to me on almost every interview episode, but enough about me. If you hang your hat all on the interview format, you're destined for podfade. Format number 2, pontification. And by the way, I am also accepting submissions for better rhyme schemes to help you remember this rule of threes. But pontification is a fancy way of saying this one's about you talking, you sharing your ideas, your takes, hot or otherwise. Everything that you can speak about because you've had years of experience or you have an interesting moment of enlightenment or point of view or life experience or just sense of humor. This might sound like a lot when you're like, oh no, I don't even like the sound of my voice. And then I have to imagine it droning on for 15 to 20 or more minutes. But you're not being put on the hot seat. You are being put in the spotlight, which really is the whole point here. You are the host of this podcast for a reason. You are the one who's going to create value here. Therefore, you need to show up with your special point of view and thing to say. And honestly, I'm doing it right now. It's kind of nice. I don't have to worry about if I'm running late, which if you know, I most often am. And thanks for loving me anyway, everyone in my life. I digress again. But I'm sitting here and feeling like I'm running the show because I am. I'm not having to think about whether the other person on the end of this episode is well prepared or just going to phone it in with the same answers they give on every podcast they appear on. And I get to drive this bus. It's all about me. But really, it's all about me knowing what you, the listener, came here for, which is how do I make a podcast that lasts? You're here to hear me talk the talk in a podcast about podcasting, and I'm here to give that to you. Here's a big reason why people avoid the pontification format / solo episode. They want to hide behind their guests because either they have imposter syndrome or don't trust their ideas are enough to carry a whole episode. They doubt that they alone have enough to say to fill this container of an episode or can say so in a way that is comprehensive and engaging. And listen, it does take a little time and I'm here to help. If you want to work with me, you know where to find me. I've got some templates for you. But my point is, in the end, you are the thought leader in this podcast, and you are doing it so you can build a platform for that thought leadership that showcases what you have to offer the world, potential clients. So guess what? This is going to be your most valuable format. This is the one that cements your place on your thought leadership platform. This is where your strongest following will be built. This is where people who tune in start to realize, oh, okay, I'm starting to get how she thinks. I can relate. Oh, wow, that was a useful nugget of information. I'm going to write that down. Oh, I might email her about this. I might decide to work with her. I feel like maybe we're friends because she's in my ear talking straight to me and occasionally making poop jokes. Anyway, once you get past this self-doubt that you can carry your own episode, practically speaking and logistically speaking will be your lowest lift format. Listen, I'm recording this on a Friday after a long week, after not checking everything off my to-do list, but I'm here, I've showed up, and I am making the dang thing. This is your safety net episode and arguably your most valuable episode. Moving on to episode format 3 in the rule of threes. Now, it really could be anything. I wanted it to rhyme, so I went with what I've otherwise called the mailbag episode. It's also a variation on Ask Me Anything, and it can be about one topic or many topics, but the topic generates from outside of you, where the pontification episode generates from inside your beautiful brain. The explication comes from and is inspired by a comment, a client, a member of your community bringing up something that you have a really good answer for. You can explain why it is that podcasting is so much harder than people think it is, for example. So, ideally, it also doesn't rely literally on other people showing up. It does, however, bring in another figurative voice into the room. And where do you find this other quote unquote voice? You can pick your social media platform of choice or your publishing platform of choice. Maybe you have a Substack. Maybe a subscriber has responded to one of your emails saying, "That was really great. Have you considered X?" Or maybe it's a comment on the last episode of your podcast saying, "You forgot to talk about Y." I highly recommend this to clients. And actually, it seems like you're asking a lot of your audience, but I highly recommend you literally solicit questions from your audience about what they want to hear from you on. That is giving them a return on the investment of time in your show because you're saying, "I care about you. I care about what you want to know about. Tell me what that is, and I'll probably cover it in an episode." So consider this me inviting you to do the same, and feel free to send me your questions at Courtney@soundsgreatstrategy.com. So what this looks like is finding a way to bring in, if you have signature frameworks around your area of expertise or the industry that you're in, the field that you work in. Maybe you have some go-to, I don't know, like a rule of threes to solve a problem your ideal audience is facing. And you take that as a jumping off point to show off what you got. Whatever you do in this explication episode, keep in mind you are responding to your audience, and it is your best opportunity to show, don't tell what it is you have to offer them. It's a taste of, it's like a mini amuse-bouche appetizer of what it might be like to work with you. And I'm going to tell you, I experienced this very week, not as the host of this podcast. I was the listener who found a service provider, for lack of better term, who has a very niche set of expertise that I am in need of. And having listened to her for several episodes and really having her content resonate with my pain points, guess what? I called her up, well, dropped her an email, booked a meeting, and I'm probably going to work with her. I'm probably going to pay for her big ticket offering because I already have a trust in her. I've already gotten a taste of how she works and have found myself nodding along like, yes, that's okay. I have that problem. Yes, you have a solution. I'm there. So step away from the conversation format for a minute, sit down, think about what topics you could carry on your own in response to someone's comment, question, concern, or just plain something you know you've got that is of value and you want to share with your audience. When you put these all together, they should all fall within the same area of expertise and promise that you make in the title of your podcast. I have been talking the talk. This is clearly a podcast about podcasting, which is the title and subtitle of my podcast. And when I toggle between a solo episode and the eventual questions I'll receive from you guys and the interviews, it might feel like I'm running 3 different shows, but really I'm just shifting between 3 different gears. There's a reason that works for automotives, and I promise it will work for you too. And guess what? It keeps things interesting. Who wants the same thing day in, day out, episode in, episode out? These formats will keep it fresh for you and your audience. So, recap, the formats are conversation, pontification, and explication. Call them what you will. interview, solo, mailbag, ask me anything. It's a response. It's an explanation of a quandary or a question or a comment someone has sent in your direction. Whatever you end up calling your rule of threes when it comes to episode formats, you do need ideally 3, but at least 2. Trust me, you do not want your entire podcast to hinge on another person. Our own selves are challenging enough. Don't add another self in as the main variable. Remember that opening statistic where I said most people don't make it past 3 episodes? It's not because they don't have a whole notes app worth of ideas or a massive network clamoring to be on their show. It's because that format requires perfect conditions, and perfect conditions do not exist when it comes to podcasting. But when you have multiple formats, you can match the format to your capacity, your energy, to what's going on in your head, what it is you want to get out into the world, where you're at, what's your output. If you are a podcaster feeling that creeping specter of podfade, or you're someone who's thought about having a podcast, or everyone tells you you should have a podcast, but you haven't the foggiest where to begin, yes, it is daunting. Yes, it can be a slog. Yes, it's a little bit scary sometimes. That's why I made my Podcast Accelerator community, and it might be right for you. It might not, but it is a vibrant, thriving community of podcasters learning in public, supporting and bolstering each other, sharing ideas, appearing on each other's podcasts, interviewing each other, promoting each other. If that sounds like something you want to hear more about, head on over to soundsgreatstrategy.com and add your name to the wait list. I have one for new podcasters or not yet podcasters, and one for those of you who are already in the game but are starting to feel the strain and the pain of it. Given that you've listened all the way through, first, I'm super grateful. Thank you for your time. But also my hunch is you're exactly the kind of intentional, thoughtful creator that makes my accelerators so fulfilling and strong and jovial and intelligent and open and generous. Until next time, this has been Talking the Talk, a podcast about podcasting. I'm Courtney Reimer. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for creating. Keep doing it.